Greetings, I'm Jamil Anderlini, Asia editor of the Financial Times, and I'm incredibly glad to welcome President Jin Liqun of the Asia Infrastructure Investment Bank to join me for an interview today. President Jin, 您好.
Thank you. Nice to see you again, even virtually.
Yes, I hope one day soon we'll be able to meet up again in person, hopefully not too soon, not too far away, soon enough. I'm obviously the pandemic is the topic on everyone's minds. It's affecting all of our lives all over the world. And I wanted to ask you, as the president of AIIB, how is COVID-19 affecting your investments, your investment strategy, and the way you approach your mission?
Well, I certainly understand this is a tough challenge for a development bank, particularly our institution, which is less than 5 years old. As you know, pandemic has been a downward drift on the economies of many of the members, and this would adversely affect the normal implementation of the infrastructure investment, which we finance or which they do on their own. But we have managed to deal with this tough situation with help of our member countries and other institutions. First of all, we have built up the crisis recovery facility in an amount of $13 billion to deal with the urgent need of the members who will need medical supplies, who need emergent healthcare facilities. This has turned out to be very, very effective and is very well welcomed by the member countries. On the other hand, we have tried our very best to go on with the implementation of the mainstream business, the normal infrastructure investment. So all in all, I would say looking back over 2020, we have a lot of progress. And I think we are very glad to see our management and staff have been working very hard to support all these countries.
Do you think in the wake of this pandemic that we're likely to see a shift into more investing in health infrastructure, things more focus on future pandemics and how to avoid them? Is that something you see on the horizon?
Before the outbreak of the pandemic, I discussed with the board on a number of issues, including the extension of our investment to social sector, of which healthcare is an important component. Without actually anticipating the outbreak of the pandemic, we thought it would be very much important for us to strike a proper balance between the physical infrastructure and the social infrastructure. Because we know that as you see, the bank has as its mandate the investment in infrastructure and other productive sectors. We believe education and healthcare are productive sectors. Now, the pandemic has laid bare the vulnerability of a number of countries, and it turns out that healthcare seems to be the weakest link in a global production chain. This has reinforced our conviction of striking a proper balance between traditional infrastructure projects and healthcare and other social infrastructure facilities is vitally important.
So could you give us a sense now of the scale of the bank, your overall capital to deploy, how much you've already lent, invested, and where you expect it to be in the next few years, and what your sort of top investing priorities are, just for an audience who may not be as familiar with AIIB itself?
We have $100 billion as registered capital, and with 20% paid in, The bank is adequately capitalized, and this capital base can provide support to our lending for a number of years to come. And as you know, our core value is lean, clean, and green. We want to be very cost effective in doing our business. With a very small team so far, less than 400, we have managed to build a lending program over to $20 billion. And the pandemic, during the pandemic period, as you see, our crisis recovery facility is $13 billion. So far, we have approved almost $10 billion. So you will find we are already making a difference in the development of these countries. I expect over the next couple of years, we will step by step build our annual lending program to $10 billion. So this is not a huge institution, and we aim at building our bank on the basis of sound prudential management. At the same time, we try to meet the requests of our members to the extent possible. So moving forward on a solid basis, in my view, is essential. And as you see, we have triple rating given to us by the 3 rating companies, and we believe it is vitally important for us to keep the higher rating so that our funding cost would be as low as possible. So moving forward, for instance, 2021, I think we will be able to do more of the mainstream businesses. At the same time, we will do rest of the pandemic related projects. So I would expect the lending program for 2021 would be still going very strong.
Thank you. And just for the audience who may not be aware, you are a multilateral bank with your country members are countries all over the world, correct? And these the capital paid in is paid in not just from China but from other all these member countries. I just want to maybe clarify that. Although you're headquartered in Beijing and you yourself are obviously a citizen of the PRC, but it is intended to be a multilateral organization, correct?
Well, probably I would like to provide a little bit more information to our audience who might be very much interested in learning about this institution. And ours is a multilateral development bank, which is patterned more or less on the other Bretton Woods institutions, although as a new bank set up in the 21st century, we have some different features. And all these different features have served us very well. For instance, as you know, we boost the membership of 103, and we have members from across the world in every continent except Antarctic. In North America, we have Canada as a very important member. Canada joined this bank only a few months after it was set up, although it missed the opportunity of being the founding member. But we have, throughout the whole process, I personally have maintained a very close relationship with the Canadian authorities. And once Canada becomes a member, we have 2 directors in succession serving on the board. Now, very interesting, you see, Canada is now leading a constituency with rest of the members are all non-regional developing members. So this constituency has development aspirations led by Canada. So I'm very much impressed by the directors, Canadians directors, who strike a proper balance between the need of the developing countries and also the expectations of developed members with regard to the way the bank is going to be managed. So we're very much impressed. And we also have Canadian nationals working at our institution. Some of them take very important positions. So probably the Canadians would be very happy to learn about that, and we expect to be working with them moving forward. You see, why from the very beginning we set a very important target of mobilizing developed countries to join this bank as the best guardian of this institution. Developing countries also want to have a very high standard, but the membership of developed countries like Canada and other European countries can lend credibility to the reputation of this bank. Now, this is the winter time, it's cold, we know why we would like to don a Canadian goose overcoat to shield us from the cold weather. So, you see, this is very much important. And maybe I would also talk about our relationship with the US. US is not a member, but from the very beginning, we have very good relationship with American institutions, and the Articles of Agreement was drafted by an American lawyer who has long years of experience in the World Bank. She also has experience in the private company and the World Bank. So you see, we have all of these members and the developed countries in particular to help build this bank as a strong multilateral development institution. So you see, this is a multilateral, and I have, over the last 4 decades, spent much of my career in working with the multilateral institutions, and I understand why it is important to keep such kind of institution maintain its integrity as a multilateral institution, why this bank should go that way. So probably you will be not surprised that we are broadly recognized as really a very, very, I think, important institution ever since we set up. And we have maintained a very close cooperation with the World Bank, AIIB, EBRD, and other institutions.
Good. Well, I wanted to broaden out a little bit and talk about, for example, the Chinese economy, which you're very familiar with, I know. So, I mean, this year we've seen a drop in global GDP that's bigger than any time since World War II. But at the same time, China is the only major economy that is projected to experience growth of any kind this year. How do you think that's mainly been achieved, and how strong is that recovery in China, do you think?
You see, now the global economy is in trouble, and probably this is the worst economic downturn we have ever experienced since the 1930s Great Depression. This is not a normal business cycle. It has nothing to do, or very little to do, with the business cycle. It's due to the COVID-19 pandemic. So the best way to reverse the downward downturn of the economy is to contain the virus. And luckily, we see quite a number of countries have spent enormous resources on developing the vaccine. And I hope we would have safe and effective vaccine, which would be available anytime soon. So if you look at China, China did take a lot of very tough measures to contain the virus. This has created some of the inconveniences for the people, quarantine, lockdown, and restrictions of social gathering. But for this little bit inconvenience, I think the Chinese people have also benefited very much from the early recovery. Earlier on, in the first or second quarter, the Chinese economy was negative. Now it's turned positive. So I would say China would lead the economic recovery and provide opportunities for its neighboring countries and trading partners. And I believe that particularly with the availability of the safe and effective vaccine, maybe in the second or third quarter of next year, we will see more countries walking out of the woods. And it is, I would say it is very much important for all of the countries to work together because the virus knows no national boundaries. And providing a vaccine, in my view, is a global public service, a global public good. I would say China would not be alone. Other countries would follow.
Is AIIB involved in any vaccine programs or any sort of vaccine distribution investment? Is that something that you'll be involved in at all?
You see, so far, our support has focused on providing financing to the governments for them to handle the pandemic. And we finance the medical supplies, medical gear, and also the probably quick expansion of the healthcare facilities. Now, to my knowledge, the World Bank has a very ambitious program and allocating $12 billion to support its members to purchase vaccines once they are available. But so far, there's little vaccines for the countries to purchase. But I think this is a very effective way. Under extraordinary circumstances, nothing which will be effective in dealing with the crisis could be considered extraordinary. So I would be very pleased to do something in this regard, to work with the World Bank and other institutions, because without containing the pandemic, it would be very hard for lots of these countries to see the turnaround in their economy.
So we have a new administration in the US. We've President-elect Biden is expected to take office in January. Obviously, we've gone through a period of difficulty between China and the US the last 4 years in particular. I wondered, especially since the start of the virus was first discovered in Wuhan late last year. We've seen a real deterioration in the global attitudes towards China, according to respected opinion surveys. I wonder if the friction between China and the US and maybe declining attitudes towards China around the world, has that made your job harder? Has that made AIIB's role more difficult in investing around the world or investing where you want to invest?
First of all, as I said, we have worked very well with the U.S. institutions and regulatory bodies over the last 4 years. As you know, we have U.S. companies, financial institutions such like Goldman Sachs, J.P. Morgan, and BlackRock, either to serve as the joint lead for our global dollar bond issuance or to manage our assets. And in this regard, actually, Canadian TD has also contributed substantially. So I expect to maintain this kind of working relationship. We have the support from the American regulatory bodies and the financial institutions, which is good for our members. And our members know about this very good relationship. And I think there's no reason whatsoever why this kind of relationship should not continue. I met Joe Biden when he was the vice president. And I remember vividly the breakfast meeting we had with him. I think he's very open, and he expressed his interest of developing U.S.-China relationship, because I attended the Track 2 dialogue. Track 2, which means it's non-official dialogue between the U.S. and China before I took up. And I remember we had a very good discussion. So I think he is going to be the president, which would look at all those essential matters, which is important for the United States, and also the U.S. relationship with all of the other important countries, including China. Let's see, but I'm optimistic overall about the bilateral relationship between these two countries, because the peoples of both countries understand they have a high stake in maintaining this kind of relationship. With regard to our bank, I think we would continue to offer opportunities to American real sector businesses. And as you know, our investment in infrastructure would offer very good opportunities for American companies, in addition to the working relationship with financial institutions. So I'm hopeful. I'm very much optimistic.
It's a good way to be. There's been a lot of talk, particularly in the last few years, about the trend of deglobalization. Do you believe that's a real trend or not?
Obviously, a lot of people are very much worried about the negative impact of globalized economy on their country or on some section of the people, society. This is understandable. But you see, globalized economy, globalization is the natural course of economic development. The division of labor started earlier on within a very small part of any country, ever since the industrialization of the European countries. So it's not designed by anybody. It's a logical sequence of the economic development of many countries. And obviously, globalized economy or participation in the globalized economy is beneficial. The problem, the backlash, comes from the unintended consequences of the, I would say, delayed response of governments to deal with the income gap, which comes along with the greater opportunities. So some countries quickly would be moving up. Relatively speaking, as you see, a lot of developing countries now have more economic wealth compared to the days of the 40 years ago. So for some of developed countries, in European countries, you see, they feel a little bit uncomfortable because relatively speaking, their economic power seems to go down. This is something, and I think it will take some time for people to adjust to the changed situations. On the other hand, there should be very good domestic policies to deal with the income gap, because the globalized economy offers opportunities for certain skills, whereas some other skills would have no market whatsoever. So the social policy, the income distribution should be done to deal with the increased discrepancy in some countries, particularly in some of developed countries. As you see, 40 years ago when China opened up, Chinese manufacturing capacity was very, very low. And China, indeed, I can share with my personal experience. When the World Bank financed projects in China, Chinese companies, Chinese project sponsors look forward to the equipment from Japan, from the United States, from European countries. Now the Chinese manufacturing capacity is increased, and very much so. And in the future, there will be more developing countries who would build up their manufacturing capacity. That would add further pressure to the economic restructuring of developed countries. This is a painful process, even though it would bring huge benefit to the nation as a whole. So my whole point is that the governments of all those countries should lose no time in adjusting their domestic policies. But if any country wants to desist the globalized economy or try to pull out, I would say the outcome would be very much bad without any I think, a surprise. People should be prepared for that. And I don't think the world would go back. But the current burning issue is to deal with the income discrepancy, the haves and have-nots issue must be resolved.
Great, thank you. So we had a recent story on the front page of the Financial Times, which pointed out that there has been a big drop in the lending by the large Chinese policy banks, which are the China Development Bank, etc. When it comes to the Belt and Road Initiative, which is China's sort of signature foreign policy initiative. Could you tell us a little bit about how you see the Belt and Road Initiative developing, and how perhaps maybe the original strategy is evolving today?
You see, I traveled to many developing countries prior to the outbreak of the pandemic. Over the last year, I've stayed in Beijing, without any international travel. Wherever I travel, those countries talk to me about the need to get financing from our institution to sustain their infrastructure development, sustain their economy. And on the other hand, these countries talked about Belt Road programs. I think the need for infrastructure investment connectivity is there. So far as we are concerned, I find there's some misunderstanding about this bank. They thought this bank was designed to finance Belt Road projects. I tried to clarify. These two initiatives were both promoted by the Chinese leadership. But why there should be two rather than one? Because they serve different purposes. Otherwise, it doesn't make any sense. This bank is not designed to finance Belt Road projects. It has a lot of important mandate. This is an international institution which operates by the international standards. And to my understanding, Belt Road is the platform which would invite all of the participating countries to work together to promote economic development through investment in the connectivity. So they are different. One is the multilateral development institution, the other is the platform. So you see, when you look at the way we operate, we don't pick projects from any country. The projects we process are all of them proposed to us by the borrowing members. So they gave us a list of the programs, we put them in the pipeline, and we assess all these kind of projects by our standards. For instance, environmental, social standards, and financial sustainability. So we also will look at the debt sustainability of the borrowing countries, as you see. This is very much important. Sustainability embodies a lot of senses, not just the financial, economic, financial, but also environmental, social. So we operate by a very high standard. And if some members come to us with a project which they regard as the Belt Road project, we would apply our standard to those projects. So in a way, we can contribute in a very positive way. We try to set a very high standard and to see that what we do in our member countries would be benefiting their economies, would be bring benefit to their people. And this is what we do. And I think that is why this bank has been recognized as the multilateral development bank in true sense of the word.
Great. Well, thank you so much. I think that's about all we have time for today, but it's a great pleasure to see you again. And I really do hope to see you in person sometime in the near future. Thank you so much, President Jin.
I expect to see you very soon. Thank you very much.